the same specific character of money as lacking in any specific determinacy, which made it the most suitable and the least refusable source of income for the Jews in their position as pariahs, also made it the most convenient and direct incentive for exploiting them. If, with regard to the medieval pogroms, we are informed that in some cities the persecution was directed against the wealthy while in others against the poor Jews, then this is surely no counter-evidence, but is rather the other side to the growing power of money. The relationship of Jews to money in general is more evident in a sociological constellation that gives expression to that character of money. The role that the stranger plays within a social group directs him, from the outset, towards relations with the group that are mediated by money, above all because of the transportability and the extensive usefulness of money outside the boundaries of the group. The relation between the nature of money and the stranger is already noticeable among some primitive people. Money consists there of tokens that are imported. For instance, in the Solomon Islands and among the Igbo on the Niger, a kind of industry exists that manufactures tokens out of shells or other monetary symbols. These tokens circulate as money not in the place of production but in the neighboring areas to which they are exported. This calls to mind fashion, which is so often particularly valued and powerful if it is imported. Money and fashion are forms of social interaction, and it seems that social elements, just like the focusing of our eyes, sometimes converge. Best on a point that is not too close. The stranger as a person is predominantly interested in money for the same reason that makes money so valuable to the socially deprived, namely, because it provides chances for him that are open to fully entitled persons or to the indigenous people by specific concrete channels and by personal relationships. It has also been emphasized that it was strangers who, in front of the Babylonian temple, threw money to the native girls who then prostituted themselves for it. There is another connection between the sociological importance of the stranger and of money. The pure monetary transaction is obviously something secondary. The basic interest in money expresses itself first and foremost in trade. For good reason, the trader is usually a stranger at the beginning of economic development. As long as the economic spheres are small and do not yet possess a highly developed division of labor, direct exchange or purchase suffices for necessary distribution. The trader is required only for the provision of goods produced in faraway areas. The decisiveness of this relationship is demonstrated by its reversibility. Not only is the trader a stranger, but the stranger is also disposed to become a trader. This becomes evident as soon as the stranger is not only temporarily present in the society but settles and looks for permanent support within the group. Thus, the citizens in Plato's laws are prohibited from owning gold and silver, and all trade and manufacturing is specifically reserved for strangers. The fact that the Jews became a trading people is due not only to their suppression but also to their dispersal throughout all countries. The Jews became familiar with money business only during the last Babylonian exile, prior to which time it was unknown to them. This is emphasized by the fact that it was particularly the Jews of the diaspora who followed this profession in large numbers. Dispersed peoples, crowded into more or less closed cultural circles, can hardly put down roots or find a free position in production. They are therefore dependent on intermediate trade, which is much more elastic than primary production, since the sphere of trade can be expanded almost limitlessly by merely formal combinations and can absorb people from outside whose roots do not lie in the group. The basic trait of Jewish mentality to be much more interested in logical formal combinations than in substantive creative production must be understood in the light of their economic condition. The fact that the Jew was a stranger who was not organically connected with his economic group directed him to trade and its sublimation in pure monetary transactions. With a most remarkable insight into the Jewish situation, a statute of Osnabrück at the turn of the 13th century permitted the Jews to take 1% interest per week and thus % yearly, whereas the usual rate was 10% per year at the most. It was of particular importance that the Jew was a stranger not only with regard to the local people, but also with regard to religion. Since the medieval ban on taking interest was therefore not valid for him, he became the recognized person for money lending. The high interest rate charged by Jews was the result of their being excluded from land ownership. Mortgages on landed property were never safe for them, and so they always feared that a higher authority would declare their claims null and void, as did King Wenzel for Franken in 1390, Charles IV in 1347 for the Burgrave of Nuremberg, and Duke Henry of Bavaria in 1338 for the citizens of Straubing. The stranger needs a higher risk premium for his enterprises and loans. This connection is not only valid for the Jews, but is deeply rooted in the essence of trade and of money, and is just as important for a series of other phenomena. I will refer here only to those in modern times. The world stock exchanges of the 16th century, Lyons and Antwerp, gained their distinctive character through strangers on the basis of almost unlimited freedom of trade which the alien merchant enjoyed here. This again is bound up with the money transactions characteristic of these places. A money economy and free trade possess a deep inner relationship, no matter how often it may be obscured by historical accidents and mistaken principles of governments. The role of the stranger in financial transactions illustrates their interrelationship clearly. The financial importance of some Florentine families during the Medici period was based on the fact that they were banished by the Medici or deprived of their political power. In order to regain strength and importance, they were dependent on financial transactions, since they could not pursue any other business away from home. It is worth observing how, on closer scrutiny, other concurrent but apparently contradictory events reveal the same relationship. When Antwerp in the 16th century was the undisputed center of world trade, its importance rested upon the strangers, the Italians, Spaniards, Portuguese, British and Germans, who settled there and sold their merchandise. The native people of Antwerp played a very restricted role in trading and were employed mainly as commission agents and as bankers in financial business. In this international society unified by the interests of world trade, the native people played the role that is otherwise often played by the stranger. What is decisive here is the sociological relationship between a large group and some estranged individuals. The latter, because they do not have any direct relationship with more concrete interests, turn towards financial transactions. In most cases such a relation develops between the native people and strangers. When the Anglo-Saxons had absorbed the British population whom they had not expelled, they called them the strangers. Wherever, as in Antwerp, strangers represent a large cohesive group and where it is the native people who are the dispersed minority, then the result shows that the same sociological cause has the same effect, whereas the question as to which of the elements is locally born and which is foreign is of no importance.